The cold bit at Eli's fingers as he pulled his thin jacket tighter. Rain had soaked through his shoes, and each step made a wet squish sound. 3 months on, the streets had taught him which spots stayed dry when it rained. Tonight he found a small space under the edge of an old brick building. The bright signs from nearby stores made colorful spots on the wet ground. Cars rushed by, splashing water onto the sidewalk. But Eli was just far enough away to stay dry. At 17, Eli had learned how to be almost invisible. He kept his head down when people walked by. Most didn't even see him, which was usually how he liked it. Being seen often meant being chased away, or worse. His stomach made a low growl that reminded him he hadn't eaten since morning when a kind woman at the coffee shop had given him a day-old muffin and a cup of hot chocolate. From his backpack, Eli pulled out his most prized thing, a book with bent corners and water stains on some pages. He had found it in a trash can behind the library. Inside the front cover, he kept a small photo of his mom. In the picture, she was smiling and holding a much younger Eli on her lap. He touched the edge of the photo gently, careful not to bend it. Just need to make it to 18, he whispered to himself. His breath made little clouds in the cold air. Then I can get that job at Mike's garage. Mike had told him to come back when he was legal age. He liked how Eli could name every part of a car engine. Even though he'd never had real training, the street got quiet as stores closed for the night. Eli knew the quiet wouldn't last. This part of town came alive again after midnight. The bars down the block would empty out and drunk people would stumble by, sometimes throwing bottles or yelling. Eli pulled his backpack closer, making sure it was wedged between his body and the wall. He had learned to sleep with one eye open. The first rumble of motorcycles came just before midnight. The sound bounced between buildings, making it hard to tell which direction they were coming from. Eli tensed up. Bikers meant trouble in this area. Different groups fought over who controlled which streets. Regular folks stayed away when they heard bikes coming. Please go somewhere else, Eli thought. He tried to make himself smaller against the wall. The bikes got louder, then suddenly stopped. Men's voices shouted a block away. Eli held his breath. Then came the sharp crack of gunshots. 1, 2, 3 in quick order. Car tires squealed and more engines roared to life. The sound of bikes starting again filled the air, but one engine was missing from the group. A heavy thud hit the ground around the corner. Without thinking about it, Eli shoved his book back into his backpack and peeked his head out. Most people would run away from gunshots. Something pulled Eli toward them. Instead, hello, he called softly, walking slowly toward where the sound had come from. His heart pounded so hard he could feel it in his throat. In the weak yellow light from a street lamp, Eli saw a large man on the ground. The man wore a leather vest covered in patches. Blood spread in a dark pool under him. The biggest patch on the back of his vest showed a skull with wings. Even Eli knew what that meant. This wasn't just any biker. This was the president of the Hells Angels, the most feared motorcycle club in the city. The man's eyes fluttered open, locking onto Eli's face. Kid, he gasped, trying to reach for his pocket. His hand shook too much to get there. Eli should run. Every lesson the street had taught him said to get away from this man and this place. But another voice inside him, one that sounded like his mother's, wouldn't let him leave someone to die alone in the rain. He dropped to his knees beside the big man. Don't move, he said. I'll get help. His hands shook as he pulled off his jacket, the only thing keeping him warm, and pressed it against the bleeding hole in the man's chest. Phone, the biker managed to say, his voice a rough whisper. Back pocket. Eli reached under the heavy man and felt for a phone. His fingers found it slippery with rain and blood. He dialed 911 with one hand while keeping pressure on the wound with the other. 911, what's your emergency? The woman's voice sounded far away and calm. A man's been shot, Eli said Corner of Cedar and 9th. He's bleeding bad. Stay on the line. Help is coming. Keep pressure on the wound. The biker's eyes were starting to close. Eli leaned closer. Hey, stay awake. Look at me. The man's eyes opened again, filled with pain and something else. Surprise. Why are you helping me, kid? He asked between short, hard breaths. Eloy didn't have an answer that made sense. He just knew he couldn't walk away. Ambulance is coming. Just hold on. From down the street came the wail of sirens. The biker's hand suddenly grabbed Eli's arm with surprising strength. My guys, he said urgently. They'll come looking. Tell them, he coughed, and blood appeared at the corner of his mouth. Tell them Razor sent you. The ambulance lights made red and blue. Shadows dance across the wet street. 2 men in uniform rushed to the biker and pushed Eli gently aside. They worked fast, putting tubes in the man's arm and an oxygen mask over his face. Eli stood back, watching as they lifted the big man onto a stretcher. His jacket was still pressed to the wound, now soaked with blood. You coming, kid? One of the medics asked, looking at Eli's thin t-shirt and the blood on his hands. Eli hesitated. He had never been in an ambulance before. Hospitals asked questions he couldn't answer. But the biker, Razor, had told him to find his guys. Maybe at the hospital, Eli could pass along the message and then slip away. Yeah, he said, climbing in after the stretcher. The hospital was bright and smelled of cleaning supplies. Nurses and doctors rushed around speaking words Eli didn't understand. Someone gave him a blanket and pointed to a plastic chair in the waiting room. Police will want to talk to you, the nurse said. Fear twisted in Eli's stomach. Police meant questions about where he lived, who his parents were. It could mean being sent back to foster care, or worse, to his mom's boyfriend, who had promised to teach him respect. With his fists, the sound of heavy boots on the tile floor made Eli look up. 5 men in leather vests with the same wing skull patch had entered the waiting room. Their faces were hard, eyes scanning the room until they landed on Eli, small, dirty, with blood on his hands and shirt. The biggest one, with a long gray gruff, walked straight to him. You the one who found Razor? Eli nodded, his mouth dry. He told me to tell you he sent me. The man's eyes narrowed. What happened? Eli told them everything. The gunshots. Finding Razor on the ground. Calling 911. He left out the part about being homeless. The bikers listened, without interrupting. Wait here, the gray gruffed man said. Finally, the group moved to the desk, demanding information about their president. Hours passed. Eli dozed in his chair, waking whenever new boots stomped into the waiting room. By morning, over 20 bikers had gathered. Some brought coffee and donuts. One handed Eli a cup without looking at him. A doctor in a white coat came out. He's stable, she told the group. The bullet missed his heart by less than an inch. If he hadn't gotten help right away, he would have died. Before reaching the hospital, all eyes turned to Eli. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable with the attention. A woman pushed through the crowd of bikers. She had long, dark hair, with streaks of gray, and wore a leather jacket with the club symbol on the back. She walked straight to Eli. You saved my husband's life, she said, her voice raspy like she'd been crying. What's your name, kid? Eli. I'm Marie. Where are your folks? We should let them know what happened. Eli looked down at his hands. The blood had dried in the lines of his palms. Don't have any. Marie's eyes softened. Where do you stay then? Eli shrugged. Around. Understanding crossed her face. She turned to the gray gruffed man. Gruff. The boys got nowhere to go. Gruff frowned. We ain't running a shelter. He saved Razor, Marie said, her voice sharp. We owe him. An argument broke out among the bikers. Some thought bringing an outsider to their clubhouse was too risky. Others felt they owed Eli for saving their president. Eli wished he could just disappear. He was used to being invisible, not the center of attention. Enough. Gruff's voice boomed. Razor would want us to look after the kid, at least until he's back on his feet. The clubhouse sat on the edge of town. An old brick building with blacked out windows and heavy metal doors. Inside it smelled of leather, cigarettes, and beer. Pool tables and couches filled the main room. Flags and patches covered the walls. Eli was given a small back room with a cot and told to stay out of the way. He kept his backpack close, ready to run if needed. But Marie brought him clean clothes that had belonged to her, sun and hot food that made his stomach hurt after months of eating so little. "Why are you helping me?" Eli asked her. On the second day, Marie was quiet for a moment. "My boy would be about your age now," she said finally. "He got into bad stuff, drugs. We couldn't save him." That night, Eli lay on the cot listening to the sounds of the clubhouse. Men laughing, bottles clinking, pool balls cracking together. He felt out of place, but couldn't deny it was better than the cold streets. In the morning, he started cleaning up. Without being asked, he fixed a leaky sink that had been dripping using tools he found in a closet. The bikers watched him, but said little. He could feel their eyes on him, suspicious and curious. 3 days after the shooting, Razor came home from the hospital. He was pale and moved slowly, helped by Gruff and another biker. When he saw Eli, he stopped. "So you stuck around," he said, his voice still weak. Eli nodded. "They said I could stay a few days." Razor looked at him for a long moment. "We'll see about that." Days turned into a week. At the clubhouse, Eli kept to himself, fixing things that were broken and helping Marie clean. Some of the bikers still watched him with cold eyes. Others nodded when they passed him, which was their way of saying thanks. Razor spent most days in his room, resting. Eli would hear him coughing through the thin walls. Once he heard Razor and Marie fighting about him. "We can't keep some street kid here," Razor said. "We don't know anything about him. He saved your life," Marie answered. "And he's just a boy." Eli knew his time was running out. He started keeping what little food he could in his backpack. If he had to leave fast, at least he wouldn't be hungry right away. One night, Eli woke up screaming. The dream had been so real. His mother's boyfriend chasing him with a belt, the sound of glass breaking, his mother crying. He sat up, shaking and wet with sweat. His door flew open and Gruff stood there with a gun in his hand. "What's happening?" Gruff demanded, looking around the room for danger. Eli pulled his knees to his chest. "Nothing. Just a bad dream. Sorry." Gruff lowered his gun but didn't leave. "You want to talk about it?" Eli shook his head, but the words came anyway, spilling out like water from a broken dam. He told Gruff about his mom's boyfriend, how the man drank and got mean, how he hit Eli's mom, and when Eli tried to stop him, he turned on Eli too. How Eli had run away when the man threatened to kill him, and how foster care had been just as bad. "So, I left," Eli finished. "The streets are hard, but at least no one is hitting me there." Gruff said nothing, but his face had grown dark with anger. He left without a word. Eli curled up on his cot, sure he'd said too much. In the morning, he'd be gone. But morning brought a surprise. Razor called a meeting. All the members gathered in the main room. Over 30 men, in leather vests. Eli stood in a corner, trying to be invisible. Razor sat in a big chair at the head of the room, still pale but looking stronger. "This kid," Razor said, pointing to Eli, "saved my life when he could have just kept walking. I've been thinking about why the room was quiet. Even the birds outside seemed to stop singing. He's had it rough," Razor continued. "Rougher than some of us. And what did he do? He helped someone who needed it. That's what family does." Eli felt his chest tighten. Family was a word he hadn't heard in a long time. "Boys," Razor said, "I think we need to help him like he helped me." Gruff stepped forward. "I made some calls. Got the story on his mom's boyfriend. Real piece of work. Been in and out of jail." Eli's heart sank. They'd checked up on him, which meant they knew he wasn't lying, but it also meant they might send Him back. Razor nodded. Kid needs a safe place and he's good with his hands. Fixed that sink that's been leaking for months. He's not one of us, said a biker named Wheels. We don't take in strays. I was a stray, said another member. A younger guy named Toad. Razor found me sleeping in an alley when I was 15. Gave me a job at his shop. The argument grew louder. Eli backed toward the door, ready to run, but Marie appeared beside him and put her hand on his shoulder. Wait, she said softly. Razor held up his hand, and the room went quiet again. I've got an idea. We pass the hat, set the kid up with a place to stay until he turns 18. Then we get him that job at Mike's garage he talked about. Gruff took off his hat and put a $100 bill in it. I'm in. One by one, the bikers added money. Even Wheels tossed in some bills, though he didn't look happy about it. That's not all, Razor said. I made a call to Blackie in the Oakland chapter. Told him what happened. He's passing the hat, too. Eli couldn't believe what he was hearing. These tough men were taking up a collection for him. It didn't seem real. Razor wasn't done. Blackie called the Denver chapter and they called Chicago. Word spreading. Clubs that wouldn't piss on each other if they were on fire or coming together. On this, Marie squeezed Eli's shoulder. See, you did something special. A biker Eli didn't know well walked up to him. He had tattoos covering his neck and a scar across his cheek. You got a problem with any of us helping you? He asked, his voice gruff. Eli shook his head, unable to speak. Good, the biker said. Because like it or not, you're family now. Family. The word echoed in Eli's head. After 3 months of being alone, of feeling invisible, suddenly he mattered to people. And not just any people. The most feared motorcycle club in the city thought he was worth saving. Thank you, Eli whispered, his voice breaking. Razor smiled for the first time since coming home. Don't thank us yet, kid. This is just the beginning. 2 weeks later, Eli stood in front of a small apartment building with Marie and Razor. It wasn't fancy, just a one-bedroom place with basic furniture. But to Eli, it looked like a palace. The walls were clean white, and sunlight streamed through windows that weren't broken or covered in dirt. This is too much, Eli said, his voice shaking as Razor handed him a set of keys. Razor shook his head. It's not enough, kid. But it's a start. Marie showed him around. The tiny kitchen with a working stove, the bathroom with hot water, the bedroom with a real bed, and sheets that smelled like soap. Eli ran his hand over the smooth countertop, hardly believing it was real. There's food in the fridge, Marie said, and Gruff will be by tomorrow to take you shopping for clothes. Later, when they were about to leave, Razor handed Eli a small book. It wasn't a book for reading, but one with numbers in it. A bank book. 937, Razor said, pointing to a number on the page. That's how many bikers put money in for you. Clubs from all over the country. Some of them hate each other's guts, but they all agreed on this. Eli stared at the number written in the book. It was more money than he'd ever seen. Why would they do that for me? Because what you did, saving me when you had nothing. That means something too. Guys like us, Razor explained. We live by our own rules, but we know about loyalty and respect. You showed both. Eli's 18th birthday came 3 weeks later. True to his word, Razor took him to Mike's garage. Mike, a big man with oil-stained hands, looked Eli up and down. You know anything about fixing cars? Mike asked. Some, Eli said. I've read a lot of books about engines. Mike grunted. Books don't fix cars. Hands do. But Razor says you're good with your hands. So, we'll see. That first day was hard. Eli's back ached from bending over engines. His fingers were cut and bruised from tools he wasn't used to. But when he fixed his first car, an old truck with a fuel line problem, the feeling was better than anything he could remember. Months passed. Eli learned fast. Mike stopped watching over his shoulder and gave him his own set of tools. The Nightmares came less often. When they did, he would read his book, the one he'd carried with him on the streets, until he fell back asleep. On the 1-year mark of the night, he'd found Razor bleeding in the rain. The club threw a party. Hundreds of bikers rode into town, their engines making a thunder that shook the windows of Eli's apartment. They gathered at a big field outside the city. There were bikes of every color. Grills smoking with meat, music playing from speakers. Razor, fully healed now, stood on a platform made of wooden pallets. His voice boomed over the crowd. 1 year ago, a kid with nothing saved my life, he said. Today, that kid has a home, a job, and a future. But there are more kids out there like him. The crowd went quiet. So today we're starting something new. We're calling it the Guardian Fund. Every year we'll find kids who need help and give them what they need to get off the streets. Cheers erupted. Eli felt his eyes burn with tears. Marie put her arm around his shoulders. You did this, she said. You changed how these tough guys think about helping others. As the sun set, painting the sky pink and gold, Eli walked to his car. An old Chevy he'd fixed up himself at the garage. In his pocket was the photo of his mother, now in a small frame instead of hidden in a book. He hadn't found her yet, but with help from Gruff and some of the other bikers, he was getting close. From his glove box, he took out a small patch Razor had given him. It wasn't club colors. Eli wasn't a member, and never would be, but it was special, made just for him. It showed a guardian angel with motorcycle wings. Eli pinned it to his work jacket and looked out at the field filled with bikers. They were laughing, telling stories, sharing food and drinks. They still looked scary to most people, big men in leather with rough faces and hard hands. But Eli knew better now. He knew that family wasn't always what you were born into. Sometimes it found you when you needed it most. As he walked back to join the party, Eli remembered that rainy night when he'd been alone and cold. The sound of motorcycles had meant danger then. Now, it sounded like